Your rational judgment is consistently and profoundly distorted by the first piece of irrelevant, arbitrary, or even false information you encounter. We're going to show you how this one invisible detail hijacks your mind and dictates your financial, professional, and personal choices. This is the story of a cognitive bias so powerful it literally shapes the fabric of your reality, all without you ever noticing.
Just let that sink in for a second. Think about the first number you hear in a negotiation, right? That initial salary offer that feels just a little too low, or the first price you see on a tag for a coat you kind of like. Even a totally random number spoken out loud can have this almost magnetic pull on every single thought that comes after. And it doesn't matter if that number is fair or true or completely made up. In a split second, it becomes the center of your mental universe, a gravitational point that all your other judgments just struggle to escape from.
So in this explainer, we are going to map out exactly how this incredibly powerful bias works. We'll start by really getting a feel for the anchor's invisible pull, and then we'll look at the very real, very high costs it has on our lives. We're going to break down your brain's automatic estimation loop, and then, and this is the most important part, we're going to arm you with a practical toolkit for how to neutralize an anchor. And finally, we'll discover how to win the most important battle there is for your rational mind.
Okay, so let's dive right into the central paradox of anchoring. It is so simple, but it's also kind of shocking. The final number you agree to in almost any decision isn't based on some rational process of figuring out objective value. Nope, it's almost always dictated by the first number you heard. I mean, think about that. It means the starting point, not the logical journey you take, is what determines your destination. All that careful thinking you think you're doing, a lot of the time it's just you rationalizing a journey that started from a completely random spot on the map.
And look, this isn't just some quirky brain teaser from a psychology textbook. It has real, tangible, and often really expensive consequences. This bias isn't something that happens to other people. It's happening to you every single day in ways that cost you money, opportunity, and honestly, peace of mind.
Does any of this feel familiar? That nagging feeling of buyer's regret after you bought a car where the salesperson started with a sky-high sticker price and the great deal you got still feels, off? Or what about that sinking feeling months into a new job that you accepted a salary offer that was anchored way too low from the very first conversation, and now it's limiting your earning potential for years to come? Maybe it's just sticking to a budget you made 5 years ago, anchored to old costs, and wondering why you never seem to have enough money. Or, we've all done this, being drawn to a 50% off sign, where the original price, the anchor, was probably inflated in the first place just to make the sale price look like a steal. This is the real cost of anchoring. It's that emotional and financial pain that comes from your mind being secretly manipulated by the first number it sees.
It feels totally irrational, doesn't it? Almost foolish. So why is our brain, this incredible machine of logic and reason, so consistently fooled by such a simple trick? Well, the answer isn't a flaw in our character, and it's not about a lack of intelligence. It's actually a fundamental feature of our brain's operating system. It all comes down to a relentless, primal drive for one thing: efficiency. You see, your brain's #1 priority, above almost everything else, is to conserve energy. Thinking is hard work. It's metabolically expensive. It burns a ton of calories. So to operate efficiently in a super complex world, your brain has developed this whole arsenal of mental shortcuts. Psychologists call them heuristics, to reduce what's called cognitive load. And anchoring is one of its absolute favorites because it works so well to make a complex decision feel simple and fast.
Now, this slide just perfectly illustrates the two choices your brain faces whenever it needs to figure out what something is worth. On the left, you've got the high-effort path. This is generating a true absolute value from scratch. It requires deep research, complex calculations, and it forces you to confront a whole lot of uncertainty. That's a massive cognitive load. But on the right, you've got the low-effort path. Your brain sees a number, any number, and simply adjusts from there. It feels easy, it feels certain, it feels coherent almost instantly. Now, which path do you think an energy-saving brain that's evolved over millennia to take the path of least resistance is going to choose 99% of the time?
And this right here, this is the absolute key to understanding the why. Your brain would much rather have a good enough answer right now than a perfect answer sometime later. That first number, the anchor, it gives you an immediate, powerful reduction in uncertainty. It provides a starting point, a feeling of, okay, at least I have something to work with. And your brain's reward system registers that feeling of coherence as a win, so it prioritizes that immediate reward over the long, difficult, and uncertain search for objective truth.
So how does this preference for being lazy, basically, build into such a predictable and automatic process? Well, it's not a random glitch. It's a four-step loop of cognitive sabotage that your brain runs on autopilot whenever it faces a valuation decision. Let's pop the hood and see how this thing works.
Here's how that loop works step by step. First, you get the anchor cue. A number appears, a list price, an opening offer, any reference value. Your brain immediately locks it in as the starting point. Second, hypothesis and search. Your prefrontal cortex, the so-called logical part of your brain, doesn't question the anchor. It just accepts it as a plausible idea and launches a search, not for the truth, but for evidence that confirms that the anchor is reasonable. Third, and this is the absolute critical failure point, is insufficient adjustment. You know you need to move away from that initial number, but you just can't move far enough. And finally, you land on your final valuation, a number that feels rational and justified, but is still invisibly chained to that initial, often totally arbitrary, anchor.
So let's really focus on this idea of insufficient adjustment, because this is where the whole system breaks down. Even when you consciously know an anchor is ridiculous, let's say a house is listed for $1 million over its true market value, your brain still can't fully escape its pull. You'll negotiate down, of course, but study after study shows you will still end up paying way more than if the house had been anchored with a more reasonable starting price. The anchor acts like this gravitational center, and our mental adjustments are like these weak little rockets trying to achieve escape velocity. We burn a lot of fuel, but we almost never make it out of orbit.
And this is where it gets really sneaky. The part of your brain you count on for logic and reason, your prefrontal cortex, is actually hijacked. Instead of being an objective judge trying to find the correct answer, it becomes a lawyer for the anchor. It actively starts building a compelling case to prove that the first number is correct. It cherry-picks data, it ignores contradictory evidence, and it builds this logical-sounding argument for why a value close to the anchor makes perfect sense. Your own brilliant mind is actively working against you to justify the bias.
Okay, so we get the problem, we see the loop, we've probably all felt the consequences, and yeah, that can feel a little disheartening. But knowledge is power, and now we can shift our focus from the problem to the solution. So how do we fight back against a process that is so automatic and so deeply wired into our brains? Well, we need a practical, actionable toolkit to break the cycle.
Because anchoring is automatic and non-conscious, you can't just wish it away or tell yourself to be more rational. It just doesn't work. We have to use intentional, deliberate strategies to force our brain onto a different, more effortful path. So here are 3 of the most effective tools you can start using today to get back in control of your judgment.
The first, and honestly the most powerful strategy, is to set your own anchor before you're exposed to anyone else's. I call this the forced internal anchor rule. Before you walk into a car dealership, before you start a salary negotiation, before you even look at a house online, you must do your own independent research. You decide on a precise, data-driven, non-negotiable value, and you physically write it down. This act of writing it down forces your brain to do the hard work up front, creating a strong, evidence-based internal reference point that can resist that gravitational pull of any external number you hear later on. You're giving your brain a better anchor to latch onto. Your own.
But what happens if you can't set an anchor first? What if you're ambushed with one? The second strategy is to fight fire with fire. When someone gives you an anchor, say a crazy high opening offer of $100,000, you don't just start adjusting down from there. Instead, you use a little behavioral trick. You consciously and deliberately consider an absurdly different value. Think to yourself, okay, what if this was worth $10,000? It feels silly, I know, but what it does neurologically is incredibly powerful. It expands your mental range of what's possible. It creates a competing gravitational pull at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which makes your rational goals seem far more moderate and achievable in comparison. You're basically using the brain's own mechanism against itself to pull the final average back toward your side.
And the third tool is to actively deconstruct their anchor. Instead of letting your brain automatically fall into its confirmation loop, searching for all the reasons why the anchor is right, you have to force it to do the exact opposite. This is called disconfirmation seeking. You have to actively and aggressively search for any and all evidence that proves the anchor is wrong or inflated or just completely irrelevant. You become a detective who's looking for flaws in their case.
And you can do this by asking direct, challenging questions, either to yourself or to the other person. What objective data supports this number? Can you walk me through the specific factors and assumptions that led you to this valuation? Why is this number so high compared to these other data points I have? By forcing a justification, you engage your higher effort, rational brain. And you break that automatic confirmation bias loop that gives the anchor all of its invisible power. You're switching from playing defense to playing offense.
So when you put all of this together, the neuroscience, the cognitive loop, these practical strategies, it all boils down to one incredibly powerful final insight, and it completely redefines where the battle for good judgment truly takes place.
It's not in the long, drawn-out process of deliberation. It's not in the complex spreadsheets or the pro and con lists that you make afterwards. The entire battle for a rational, clear-headed decision
is almost entirely decided before you even realize a decision is truly being made. It's won or lost in this tiny, fleeting window of time that most of us completely ignore, a moment that passes without us ever noticing its profound impact.
The battle is won or lost in the first 5 seconds. In that critical moment when the first piece of information hits your brain, your mind's starting point is infinitely more important than its final calculation. Your intelligence, your experience, your logic, all of it is constantly at risk of being hijacked by the most trivial of cues presented in that initial, unguarded moment.
So the next time you have to make an important decision, ask yourself, what was my anchor? Was it based on objective truth, or was it just the first number I happened to see? Because as we've seen, the value of almost anything in our minds is ultimately determined not by what's real, but by that first, powerful, and often invisible number.